So Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are out there doing piggyback rides and butt grabs for the cameras again. And honestly, the harder they try to look like this carefree, perfect couple, the more it feels like we're watching a performance designed specifically to make us forget something. Like the math isn't mathing, the energy is off, and the timeline of this full-blown charm offensive is the most telling part of the whole thing. Before we jump in, if you love breaking down celebrity contradictions as much as I do, hit that subscribe button for Pretty Loud. We do this every single time the PR machine goes into overdrive. All right, let's get into it. So, the images dropped this week of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds taking a walk in New York. And I use the word walk loosely because this was a full-scale production. Ryan Reynolds is giving Blake Lively a piggyback ride down the street. She's grabbing his butt. He's turning around and looking directly into the camera lens with this little smirk like, "Yeah, you getting this, you seeing this. My wife is touching my rear end in public." And you're capturing it for the world. It's not a candid moment, it's a staged play. And the thing is, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have been doing these paparazzi strolls for 3 weeks straight now. 3 consecutive weeks of curated public displays of affection, piggyback rides, hand-holding, stopping to take selfies with fans because that's just so them, right? They love connecting with the people, except none of it feels spontaneous. It feels like they're submitting evidence, like they're building a case file labeled, "Look how happy we are. Please ignore everything else." And the reason this matters, the reason people are side-eyeing every single one of these photos is because of what happened last summer. The It Ends With Us press tour. That's where this entire narrative shifted. That's where Blake Lively went from being America's approachable blonde sweetheart to someone the internet collectively decided they were done with. And Ryan Reynolds was right there in the middle of it, not helping the situation. So to understand why they're working so hard right now, you have to understand what they're trying to make you forget. Blake Lively starred in It Ends With Us, a movie about domestic violence based on the Colleen Hoover book, and the way she promoted that film was a disaster. It wasn't just tone-deaf, it was actively off-putting. While her co-star and director, Justin Baldoni, was doing interviews about the serious subject matter, about the importance of portraying intimate partner violence responsibly, about the advocacy work connected to the film, Blake Lively was doing something completely different. She was promoting her hair care line, she was launching her beverage brand, she was doing floral print fashion moments and telling people to grab their girlfriends and wear their florals to the theater. The disconnect was jarring. You had Justin Baldoni talking about the gravity of abuse, and then you had Blake Lively acting like she was promoting a rom-com about flower shops, and people noticed. The comment sections were brutal. Old interviews started resurfacing, and suddenly Blake Lively wasn't the beloved Gossip Girl star anymore. She was being called out for mean girl behavior, for being dismissive to interviewers, for having an air of condescension that people said they'd been overlooking for years. Then Ryan Reynolds entered the chat. And this is where it gets interesting because Ryan Reynolds has built his entire public persona on being the self-aware, quippy, likable guy. Deadpool with a heart of gold. The marketing genius who sells gin and mobile networks and soccer teams, all with that same wink, wink, nudge, nudge tone. But during this Blake Lively backlash, he didn't read the room. He inserted himself into the It Ends With Us drama in ways that made things worse. He posted jokes, he did his usual shtick, he brought his humor into a conversation that was serious, and it landed badly. People started saying, wait, is Ryan Reynolds actually kind of exhausting? Is the constant quipping actually a defense mechanism? Is this guy who we all decided was the internet's boyfriend actually just as calculated as everyone else in Hollywood? And then the really damaging stuff started circulating. The rumors about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds being difficult behind the scenes, the whispers about their conduct on sets, the resurfaced interview where Blake Lively made a joke about a journalist's fertility struggles, the clip from years ago where she was rude to a reporter who wished her well on her pregnancy. All of it came back, and suddenly the power couple narrative, the one they'd built so carefully for over a decade, was cracking. People weren't buying it anymore. The brand was damaged. And when a brand is damaged, you don't just sit back and hope it repairs itself. You launch a counteroffensive. Which brings us to these paparazzi walks. Because here's the thing about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, they know exactly how this works. They are not naive celebrities who accidentally wandered into a photo op. Ryan Reynolds in particular is one of the most marketing-savvy people in the entertainment industry. He built his entire business empire on understanding how to sell things. He sold aviation gin for over $600 million. He sold Mint Mobile for over $1 billion. He knows how to shape perception. So, when you see Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds doing piggyback rides and butt grabs and stopping to take selfies with fans, that's not a couple being spontaneous. That's a couple executing a strategy. And the strategy is pretty transparent. It's called flooding the zone. You put out so much positive, happy, carefree content that it buries the negative stories in search results and social feeds. Someone searches Blake Lively. They see her laughing on Ryan's back. Someone searches Ryan Reynolds. They see him holding hands with his wife and smiling at fans. The algorithm favors the new replaces the old, and the hope is that the public moves on and forgets why they were upset in the first place. But the problem with this strategy is that it only works if people don't feel manipulated. And right now, the manipulation is too visible. The piggyback ride was staged. The butt grab was for the cameras. The turn and smirk at the paparazzo was Ryan Reynolds acknowledging that he knows exactly what he's doing, and he wants you to know it too. But here's the miscalculation. When you wink at the audience in the middle of a performance designed to look real, you shatter the illusion. You're essentially admitting that it's fake. And if it's fake, then what else is fake? The whole relationship? No, probably not. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have been together for over a decade. They have 4 kids. The marriage is real, but the public dynamic, the carefully constructed image of the perfect, goofy, relatable couple, that's a product. And products can be damaged. Products can lose value. Products can stop selling. The irony is that Ryan Reynolds' entire brand was built on authenticity, or at least the appearance of authenticity. The Deadpool marketing worked because it felt like he was breaking the fourth wall and letting you in on the joke. The aviation gin ads worked because they felt like he was just messing around and happened to be filming it. But when you apply that same approach to your marriage during a PR crisis, it doesn't feel like authenticity anymore. It feels like damage control. And damage control is the least authentic thing a celebrity can do. What makes this whole thing even more fascinating is the contrast with how other celebrities handle backlash. Some disappear for a while. They go quiet. They let the news cycle move on to the next story. But Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds didn't do that. They doubled down. They increased their visibility. They went out there and performed happiness with the intensity of people who know they're being watched and want to give the audience exactly what they think the audience wants. But the audience doesn't want a performance. The audience wants to believe that the people they're watching are real. And once that belief is broken, once you've been caught staging your spontaneity, it's incredibly hard to get it back. There's a specific detail from these paparazzi photos that keeps getting brought up. Ryan Reynolds looking directly at the camera, not glancing, not accidentally catching the lens in his eye line, full-on direct eye contact with the photographer while smirking. That's the moment that makes this whole thing fall apart. Because a real moment, a genuine moment between a husband and wife, doesn't involve the husband checking to make sure the photographer is capturing the shot. That's not how real intimacy works. Real intimacy is unobserved. Real intimacy doesn't care about the camera. Real intimacy doesn't smirk at the lens. What Ryan Reynolds did in that photo was break character. He showed the scaffolding. He revealed the production. And now when people look at these photos, they don't see a happy couple. They see 2 people working very hard to make you think they're a happy couple. And there's a big difference between those 2 things. The other layer to this is the timing, because this 3-week paparazzi blitz didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened against the backdrop of ongoing legal drama. There are lawsuits, there are behind-the-scenes conflicts from It Ends With Us that are still playing out. Justin Baldoni has hired Crisis PR. Blake Lively has her team. Ryan Reynolds has his team. The machinery is in motion, and these paparazzi walks are part of the machinery. They're designed to project unity, stability, and likability at a moment when all 3 of those things are being questioned. The message is clear. How could Blake Lively be a difficult person to work with? Look at her. She's getting piggyback rides from her husband. How could Ryan Reynolds be exhausting and overbearing? Look at him. He's stopping to take selfies with fans. The images are meant to function as counter-evidence. But the problem is that the evidence doesn't actually contradict the accusations. Someone can be charming in public and difficult in professional settings. Someone can have a happy marriage and still be a nightmare on set. These things aren't mutually exclusive. So the paparazzi strolls don't actually disprove anything. They just show that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are capable of being affectionate in front of cameras, which we already knew. What's interesting is that this isn't new behavior for them. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have always had a very public relationship. The social media jokes, the trolling, the red carpet interviews where they talk about how much they roast each other, that's been their brand. The difference is that it used to feel genuine. It used to feel like 2 people who truly enjoyed each other's company and didn't take themselves too seriously. But context changes everything. And the context now is that they're under scrutiny. They're facing real criticism. Their reputations have taken hits. And when you keep doing the same shtick in a different context, it doesn't read the same way. What used to feel like playful banter now feels like deflection. What used to feel like authentic goofiness now feels like a calculated attempt to seem uncalculating. There's a term for this in PR. It's called image rehabilitation, and it follows a pretty standard playbook. Step 1, lay low for a brief period and let the initial outrage burn out. Step 2, reemerge with a controlled narrative that emphasizes positive qualities. Step 3, flood the zone with content that reinforces that narrative. Step 4, wait for the public to move on. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are currently in Step 3. The piggyback ride is Step 3. The butt grab is Step 3. The selfies with fans are Step 3. And Step 4 depends on whether the public actually moves on. But there's a problem with Step 4 this time. The public hasn't moved on. The comments on these photos are not what their team was hoping for. People are calling it out. They're saying it looks staged. They're saying it feels desperate. They're saying that the harder Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds try to look likable, the less likable they actually seem. That's the paradox of image rehabilitation. The effort has to be invisible. Once the effort becomes visible, once people can see you trying, the rehabilitation fails because you're not supposed to be trying. You're supposed to just be. And that's the thing about authenticity. You can't manufacture it. You can't stage it. You can't hire a photographer to capture it. Authenticity is what happens when you're not thinking about how you look. And Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds right now look like two people who are thinking about nothing else. The butt grab photo in particular has become a focal point for this criticism because it's not just that she's grabbing his butt. It's that he's turning around to look at the camera while she does it. His face is saying, "Yeah, you see this. My wife desires me. We have a fun, flirty relationship. Capture this moment for the algorithm." And you can almost hear the PR team in the background saying, "Perfect! That's the shot. That's the one that's going to go viral. That's the one that's going to make people forget about the resurfaced interviews and the tone-deaf press tour." Except it didn't make people forget. It made people say, wait, why are they working so hard? What are they trying to distract us from? And once people start asking that question, the whole strategy unravels. The thing about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds is that they were, for a long time, the gold standard of celebrity couples. They were the ones other couples were compared to. They had the banter, they had the chemistry, they had the beautiful family, they had the successful careers. They were the couple that other celebrities wanted to be. And that status was valuable. It made them marketable. It made them bankable. It made Ryan Reynolds the perfect pitchman and Blake Lively the perfect lifestyle brand. But that status depended on the public believing in the image. And the public's belief has been shaken not because of one thing, but because of an accumulation of things. The "it ends with us" press tour, the resurfaced interviews, the behind-the-scenes rumors, the legal drama, and now the paparazzi strolls that feel less like spontaneous outings and more like content creation. It all adds up. And the sum is a couple that feels for the first time like they're losing grip of their own narrative. The narrative they want is simple. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are happy. They're in love. They're playful. They're relatable. They're the couple next door. If the couple next door happen to be two of the most famous people on the planet with a combined net worth approaching $500 million. The narrative they're fighting against is more complicated. That Blake Lively is difficult. That Ryan Reynolds is exhausting. That their public persona is a carefully constructed facade. That the real people behind the brand are not as charming as the brand suggests. And the paparazzi strolls are an attempt to simplify the narrative to reduce it back down to something manageable. Happy couple, fun photos, move along. But narratives don't simplify on command. Once they get complicated, once they get messy, you can't just uncomplicate them with a piggyback ride. The complexity has to be addressed. The criticisms have to be engaged with. The questions have to be answered. And Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds aren't doing that. They're not addressing the resurfaced interviews. They're not talking about the "it ends with us" press tour. They're not explaining why the tone was so off. They're just out there grabbing butts and hoping that's enough. And maybe in the long run it will be. The public has a short memory. New scandals will emerge. New celebrities will do new things. The news cycle will move on. But for right now, in this moment, the strategy isn't working. The photos are being mocked. The staging is being called out. The effort is visible. And visible effort is the enemy of cool. Ryan Reynolds built his career on being cool. On being the guy who doesn't try too hard, who doesn't care too much, who's just effortlessly funny and effortlessly likable. But these photos show him trying. They show him caring about whether the photographer gets the shot. They show him working to maintain an image. And that's the least Ryan Reynolds thing Ryan Reynolds could do. The brand was supposed to be that he's in on the joke. But when the joke is your own marriage being performed for PR purposes, being in on it doesn't make it funny. It makes it cynical. There's a lesson here about celebrity and authenticity and the limits of image management. You can control a lot of things in Hollywood. You can control the lighting, the angles, the timing, the messaging. You can hire the best PR teams and the best photographers and the best social media strategists. But you can't control how people feel. You can't control the collective gut reaction. And right now, the gut reaction to Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds is skepticism. It's exhaustion. It's a sense that something isn't adding up. The piggyback ride was supposed to make people smile. Instead, it made people squint. The butt grab was supposed to make people say, couple goals. Instead, it made people say, this feels staged. And once that door opens, once the audience starts viewing everything through the lens of performance, it's very hard to close it again. What happens next is unclear. Maybe Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds will scale back the paparazzi walks, realizing that they're doing more harm than good. Maybe they'll try a different approach, something that feels less manufactured. Maybe they'll just wait it out, let the news cycle turn, and reemerge when the heat has cooled down. Or maybe they'll keep doing exactly what they're doing, convinced that volume and repetition will eventually override skepticism. But whatever they do, they've already revealed something important. They've shown that when the image is threatened, their instinct is to perform, not to reflect, not to apologize, not to address the substance of the criticism. Their instinct is to produce more content, and that instinct tells you everything you need to know about how Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds see their relationship with the public. It's not a conversation. It's a broadcast. They're not listening. They're projecting. And the projection right now is of a couple who really, really want you to like them. So much so that they're willing to stage their own intimacy, script their own spontaneity, and wink at the camera while doing it. The question is whether anyone's still buying what they're selling, because the audience is smarter than they used to be. The audience knows what a PR strategy looks like. The audience can spot the scaffolding. And once you see the scaffolding, you can't unsee it. You can't look at a piggyback ride and see love. You look at it and see a team of publicists standing just out of frame, hoping this one goes viral for the right reasons. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have been famous for a long time. They've weathered controversies before. They've managed their images through multiple cycles of the Hollywood machine. But this moment feels different. This moment feels like a turning point. The backlash isn't coming from a single incident. It's coming from a pattern of behavior that people are finally connecting. The resurfaced clips, the tone-deaf promotion, the behind-the-scenes stories, and now the over-the-top PR displays. It all fits. It all points in the same direction. And the paparazzi strolls, far from countering that narrative, are actually reinforcing it because they show two people who believe that image management can solve any problem. That if you just put out enough happy photos, people will forget why they were unhappy with you in the first place. That performance is an adequate substitute for accountability. And that belief, that fundamental misunderstanding of how the public works, is what's actually damaging their brand. Not the interviews from years ago, not the press tour from last summer, but the inability to do anything other than perform. The refusal to be real, even when being real is the only thing that might actually help. So, the piggyback ride continues, the butt grabs continue, the selfies with fans continue. Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are out there week after week submitting evidence of their happiness to the court of public opinion. But the jury is not buying it. The evidence feels tampered with. The witnesses seem coached, and the defendants, rather than addressing the charges, are just smiling and waving and hoping that charm will carry the day. It won't. Charm works when people trust you. And trust once broken takes more than a staged photo to repair. It takes time, it takes honesty, it takes a willingness to step out of the performance and just be a person. But Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds don't seem to know how to do that. Or maybe they've forgotten. Maybe the performance has been running so long that the line between who they are and who they're playing has blurred beyond recognition. Maybe they genuinely believe that this is what happiness looks like, a piggyback ride for the cameras, a butt grab for the algorithm, a smirk at the lens that says, we're still winning. But winning what? The public's approval? That's not something you can win with a photo op. That's something you earn. And right now, it doesn't feel like they're earning anything. It feels like they're spending the last of the goodwill they accumulated over a decade of being America's favorite couple. And the account is running low. The balance is shrinking, and no amount of staged affection is going to top it up because you can't deposit performance and withdraw authenticity. The currency doesn't convert. The math doesn't work. And Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, for all their marketing genius, don't seem to understand that. They're out there making deposits that the bank won't accept. And eventually, the account is going to close. Not with a scandal, not with a dramatic implosion, but with something quieter. Public indifference. The worst thing that can happen to a celebrity isn't being hated, it's being ignored. And if the paparazzi strolls keep going the way they're going, that's where this is headed. The public will scroll past the photos without clicking. They'll see the piggyback ride and feel nothing. They'll see the butt grab and keep scrolling. The performance will continue, but the audience will have left the theater. And Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds will be on a sidewalk somewhere, holding hands and taking selfies and looking into the camera, performing for an empty room.